Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BeJS Podcast. I am Ayman, a front-end developer based in Brussels, Belgium. I'm also the founder of BeJS, which stands for Belgian JavaScript Community. We basically organize events and activities around JavaScript ecosystem. It goes from local meetups to code competitions, drinks, hackathons, and also big international conferences. If you're interested, you can check out our website, bejs.io, and you will find all our next events. Our main event in the coming weeks is BeJS Conf, which is our international JavaScript conference, happening on the 12th of May, 2023, in Brussels and online. Check out our first wave of speakers and our announced workshops on bejs.io/conf. We will soon be announcing the full lineup, and it is going to be legendary. So let me first explain the goal of this podcast. Every month or so, we will have a discussion with JavaScript developers. So we will be inviting world-known speakers that go to almost every conferences, but also local developers or people who switched careers and become JavaScript developers. We will talk about their experience, their struggles, their wins, basically everything related to their coding journey. And today we start with my friend Stijn Van Asschodt. Did I say it right, Stijn?
Yeah, that's just about right. Yeah. So, hi, Eamon.
So, first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this. And it's my first time doing podcast, so I hope it's going to be nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be my first time as well. So, a bit nervous, not gonna lie. I guess I'll be one of your not so well-known developers to first start this one off.
But you're still a speaker, so
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe
not...
not world known, but yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, Stan, can you start by introducing yourself to the community?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Stijn Van Asschodt. So a typical Belgian name, probably, as some might hear. So I am a Belgian. I live in Mechelen, in Belgium. I'm 28 years old, and just like you, Eamon, I'm a front-end developer. So I currently work at ING. And maybe like not so formal. I have some hobbies as well outside of coding. So I'm a casual Dungeons and Dragons player. So yeah, just I would say casual because I'm not too familiar with all the ins and outs, but I have a great dungeon master who knows all that, so I can just play without caring too much. But something I'm mainly interested in right now is triathlon. So I started in COVID times to go out a bit more and do some sports outside when that was the only thing you could do basically in free time. And I really started to enjoy it. And now I joined a club here in Mechelen and just starting to train for competitions, etc.
And so you already ran a marathon? Sorry, a triathlon, or not yet? Or
I
you're
did,
training for
yeah, I
now?
did the quarter distance. So that's
Okay.
1 kilometer swimming and then 40 on the bike and then 10 running. And my goal for this year is to do a half distance. And if all goes well, then maybe next year I'll do the full distance. But
Oh,
we'll see. We'll
well,
see.
good luck, good luck, and
Yeah, thanks.
keep up practicing, and I guess you will be able to do it.
Yeah.
So, you're a developer for quite a few years now. But how did you actually start coding? Like, what was your first project, or how how did you start being interested in coding in general?
Yeah, so I've been a developer now for 5 years. But before that, I would say I've always, as a kid, I've been interested in maths and sciences. So not really into computers back then. But yeah, so a dream of mine as a little kid was becoming an inventor, and like this professory type. But then in high school, I studied maths and sciences, and I wanted to continue with that in university. So I had like one optional course in high school, which was informatics, and I expected a lot more of it than what was actually taught. So basically, we learned how to use Microsoft Office tools.
Oh,
Yeah, not really, nothing fancy, or we just how to adjust your margins to get like a perfect essay.
oh my
So
God.
yeah, pretty horrible to be honest. But once in university, then I started studying industrial engineering, and so even then I had no idea that I would like programming or coding. So at first I thought I would do industrial engineering, where you start with a big base, so still you learn everything, and then you gradually choose more, like a more direct topic. And I thought I would go with chemistry first, but that I didn't like as much. So I thought maybe electromechanics, also not so much. And eventually, in the second year, I think, then I had a friend, and we just found, well, we knew we were going to start Java development in the second year. And we wanted to prepare a bit, and we found we found a website, I think it was Code School, where we could get started on some very basic tutorials, and we actually really liked it. So we went on and we started going through the courses even before we had then the lectures in university. And so we had a very nice base already when the lectures started, and we really got an interest into it. So yeah, that's basically the long story of how I got into it. And then maybe when you said the first project, it was then something in school. The first real project I remember is where we, or wait, no, there was even one before that, where we used LabVIEW. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
It's
What is it?
so I don't know if it qualifies as a programming language. I guess so. It's maybe like a kind of application that you would use for programming, but we had our project was to build some kind of robot, and you had all these different sensors that you could connect, and in LabVIEW you could create a kind of program to uh, yeah to guide the robot. So what you would do is you had like these operations that you could do, and really you could make loops, but loops would be like it's really visual. So you drag a loop around the components that have to loop and stuff like that. So we built a little robot that had some sensors in the front to detect objects. So it would be like a self-driving kind of little robot. And when it detects an object, it would move out of the way, it would turn, and it continues. Basically like a little robot vacuum cleaner, but then without the vacuum cleaning capabilities.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, my first programming project was to build a calculator, so not original at all. Like it was pretty basic. And I remember for me, like my first programming language was Pascal. I don't know if you know
Oh,
it.
I've never
Yeah,
used it, but yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never used it. No.
yeah, it's pretty old. Like, but it was nice. Like I think it was in high school the first time.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, nice. And so after university, I guess you started looking for a job, or how did you actually transition from being a student to being a professional programmer, let's say?
Yeah. Yeah. So in our university, we had like a job day where different different companies could come in and present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So well, lucky for me or for people in our line of work, there's a lot of people or a lot of companies looking for our kind of profiles. So there were lots of options, mainly consultancy companies, but there were like lots of options, and I could just go around the campus and browse around to all the different companies, leave my uh, resume with them and leave my contacts, and then after a while they contact me, and I think I did like 6 or 7 interviews with different companies just to really try and figure out what would best suit me. A lot of it was consulting, so everyone tries to differentiate themselves, but in the end, I'm gonna be honest, it's more about the salary at that point. But what I also really like with the company I eventually joined, which is Excelis, so what they also do, you kind of mentioned it, how do you go from being a student to going to the company or to the more business life? And that's because, well, with Excelis, they provide like a kind of bridge, as they call it, between that university or student life, the graduation, and where you enter the job or the company's market. So they provide you with some trainings, so on top of your normal working hours. So they have some how do you call it? So you have really trainings that you can choose specifically that fit you, so fit your job. For me, it would be front-end trainings or conferences that I could join. But there's also just communication and teamwork and those kind of things. That's also, of course, really important when you start working in teams.
Yeah, it's true that the soft skills become more and more important in your career every time you progress or you go to the next level. So yeah, because then it becomes more about communicating, mentoring, coaching, etc. So I think it's nice. And so when you joined this company, how were you already aware that you were going to be focusing on front end, or how did you focus on front end? Did it happen by chance, or like you wanted to work on UI, etc.?
Yeah, I actually really wanted to do that because we had a interview with, so Excelis is still kind of a consultancy company. Where they differentiate a bit is that you would work 2 years at a client, and then after those 2 years, the normal trajectory is that you would become an internal at that company. So that's a bit different than the usual consultancy companies. But still, there were some clients that they had where I would then go on an interview with someone from Excelis there and someone from the client. One of those is ING, where I currently work. So I followed the normal trajectory of doing the 2 years at Excelis and then becoming an internal. But the interview I had there was like just to get to know, and then I explained what I did for what I did in university, what I did for my master thesis, and what I've done from other projects. But yeah, they were more looking for someone for backend development, and I then made clear that I just really wanted to do front end. So actually, the people I had an interview with, they didn't have a job for me in their team, in their squad, but eventually they put me in another one. So who from people or with people I've never met before. So the manager didn't even interview me, but I guess they thought it was okay. I made a good impression after
Yeah,
all.
I kind of feel like you made a really good impression.
Yeah.
And so why did you want to work with front end? I mean, like, what made it attractive to you to work in front end?
I just really like to see the result immediately, or also see what the user would be interacting with. Yeah, it's easier for me to visualize it. But visualize it. It's visual on my screen, so I really see what's happening immediately, and that's what I really like. Also, with projects in the past, yeah, we had some group projects in university where you have to build like a full application, and I always tended to go to that more front end part of the full application. I did some back end work, of course, as well, but I tended to always do like the front end part more.
And when you work on in the front end, because like I usually think that in front end there are usually two paths: people that focus more on the technical part, the architecture of the apps, etc., and some other people focus more on the UI and the UX, and they are like more close to designers, let's say. And then you have people that are more like more into technical stuff. Which part of it like do you like? And of course, like, are you? Do you think that's there is a separation like that, or do you think like a front-end developer should do everything? And
I don't know if they should do everything necessarily. I also don't know if it's really like a hard line between those two. But I do see what you mean. Personally, I really like working on the UI and seeing that result immediately, but I think I get more satisfaction sometimes when I do one of the more technical parts, or when I solve like a really hard bug that's been there for a couple of weeks and no one can figure it out, and then you work really hard on it and finally figure out that one bug, and you don't even see it visually, but somehow it really fixes some big issue. Yeah, those things give me the most satisfaction, I guess.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, so now you are working at ING. Can you tell us a bit more about your day-to-day life? Like how do you work on a daily basis? What you do, how it works, basically.
So like, well, we work in a Scrum and Agile way, if that's what you mean. So we have our backlog set up for, I guess usually the coming sprint. So we work in sprints of 2 weeks, where we plan our work ahead, or we try to do that as well as possible. And yeah, we have our epics for the quarter defined. Then we work on it. We split it up in stories that how we want to deliver that per sprint, and then we split those further up into tasks. And every day we go over what we've done the day before and what we plan to do the next day. Yeah, and
I see. Yeah, and in terms of like technologies and tools that you use, what do you use currently for the front end at ING?
all right, yeah, for front end we use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build native web components. But we use a library called Lit to make it easier to build those web components. Add some sugary syntax on it to make it easier to develop those web components. And some other tools that we use for building those web components are Open Web Components, so OpenWC, and Modern Web. Both of those are open source projects that have been partly developed by ING colleagues of mine. And so the open web components, they have some guides and tools and ways of testing for web components specifically. And they have like a scaffolder where you can just run an npm init to easily get a whole project with web components. And the modern web is more focused on the web part for like a web server, dev server, test runner, those kind of things. Linting is probably more specific to web components or the extensions we get from them. So
yeah, and so for people who don't know in our community, can you explain what a web component is and how does it work, etc.?
I can try. No, yeah. It's not too difficult. It's not too difficult. I think maybe a lot of people by now are familiar with thinking in components. So because you also have that in the more popular JavaScript frameworks and libraries, you have components in React as well and Vue. And web components that I'm talking about, which we develop in ING, those are native because they're natively supported by browsers. and they can be used in any HTML environment, or with any framework or with no framework at all. And so what you do is you create custom elements, and the functionalities and encapsulated away from the rest of your code, and you can utilize those in other web applications. So you're creating building blocks, kind of like little Lego blocks that can be used anywhere where you use HTML. That's the interoperability of the web components. And so it's three main technologies. There's custom elements. That's the set of JavaScript APIs that then allows you to define a custom element and their behavior, which then can be used in your desired user interface. So you're kind of telling the browser what the tag name will be of your web component and what the class is that defines its behavior. I think one that's built natively in and maybe many people will also know is like the video tag. That's a web component that's custom, or that's natively built into browser. And it also has a shadow DOM. So that's to attach an encapsulated the shadow DOM tree to an element. So it's rendered separately from the main document DOM, and so what you can do in this way is you keep your elements features private, and they can be scripted and styled without the fear of like colliding with other parts of the document. And the last of those three technologies is the HTML templates, and you have the template and the slot elements that enable you to write some markup templates that are not really displayed in the rendered page, but they can be reused multiple times as the basis of a custom element structure.
Yeah, I see. And so it's basically like React components, but native to the browser.
Yeah, it's a way that I see it. Yeah.
And I remember you said that you were using Lit. So, like, what is Lit basically in this ecosystem?
Yeah, so Lit is just some it's a library that makes it way easier for me as a developer to write these native web components. So I think their slogan, or at least what they have on their website, is simple, fast web components. So you want to make it easy to build fast, lightweight web components. And what they provide is fast declarative templating. So they provide reactive properties. So you can add properties instead of, I think normally with web components, like the native ones in HTML, you would have your attributes, and there's life cycles on your web components where you can see if an attribute changed, etc., and then do something based on changing that attribute. So with the reactive properties, you can define properties on your lit elements. And if a property changed, then it will automatically trigger a re-render of your page, or not your page, but actually Lit really does it very efficiently, where it will only change in the page what really needs to be changed. So,
and does it use a virtual DOM for that, or no?
No, it doesn't use virtual DOM.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So nice. So yeah. You've been working with web components and Lit for a long time. Can you tell us what are the nice things about them, and maybe if there is any caveats or issues that you encountered when working with web components or such?
Yeah. So what I like about it, right now is it really is a fast and easy way to build web components. It's nice to have them native, or to have something that's native to the browser. I think it's pretty easy as well to get started with it and to create your components. Maybe some caveats that I've noticed. Maybe I won't know all the technical details about what's better in other frameworks or such, because maybe I don't have too much experience with it. But something mainly that's bothered me, I'll say, in getting to know a little bit more, is it's not really widely used as for example React, and that means that there might not be as many examples or tutorials available as you would have with those bigger frameworks and libraries that are there for front-end development.
Yeah, it is true that people now tend to compare a lot with React and its ecosystem. And the thing is, there is nothing that you can think about that there isn't a library for it in React or something.
Yeah.
But it's not the same for other technologies like web components or Solid, which are, or Quick, that are new. So yeah, like having a big ecosystem helps a lot to be productive and to find solutions to your needs, bugs, etc. So yeah, I agree with that. And
absolutely.
so within ING, you have a product, so you probably try to keep your UI consistent throughout the entire product, etc. And so for that, you probably use a UI library. Do you have your own UI library, or do you use UI library which is available for Lit, or how is it?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a mix of both, I would say. So what we have is there is an open source library that we use, and actually that's also been developed first in-house. So it's with some ING colleagues. They have created the Lion component library. So
Okay.
that one has a lot of UI components that are developed in Lit. Yeah, they've made those available open source. And what we do then on our side is we really give them, we build on top of that library our own library, like ING Web, and so we give them the ING real styling, and we put the orange color in there and the correct font type, etc. So everything is then according to the styling guidelines of ING. But under the hood, it's the Lion web components that are built on top of that are built on Lit. So
okay, that's pretty cool. And so, did you have the opportunity to contribute to that open source library, or you were not part of the team that worked on it, or?
Yeah, I wasn't part of the team that worked on it, but since it's open source, I do get the opportunity to work a bit on it, and I think it's one of my first open source contributions, probably. So yeah, or one of the first, maybe, or at least the first, maybe, that was really not just updating documentation for someone. Because I think that was my real first open source issue that I fixed, or first contribution.
I think everyone starts with documentation. Like,
But it's a good thing, right? It's just to get familiar with the whole process of like opening a pull request, and maybe if there was even an issue open for it, linking that issue, and then closing everything. You get a review, even though it was just documentation, it's reviewed, and then you get some remarks maybe. Yeah, so getting familiar with that whole process, I think updating documentation is a valid first pull request that you can do.
Yeah,
But
so advice to anyone who wants to contribute to open source, go and check for typos in the doc.
yeah, definitely. If you notice an error somewhere in documentation of an open source project, just create a pull request to fix it.
Yeah. Actually, like, I think I don't know if you know him, Kenzie Dodds, which is one of the best content creators and developers that I know, and speakers. And his first contribution, it was a typo fix for an Angular for the Angular documentation, like a while back, but and now he has his own libraries, and also that's how everyone starts, I guess.
Yeah,
uh,
I think I heard it in like maybe he mentioned it in one of the talks, or he did do one of the virtual talks for BeJS, right? He didn't he? He never.
no, can't you? No,
That-
we never had him.
No, I'm thinking about
What?
Swix. I'm thinking about Swix. He
Ah,
did one
yes,
where I got inspired. I got inspired by Swix once, but I got inspired by Kenzie Dots as well, but then not by a talk that he did here then. Uh, but I think he inspired me indeed to do one of those pull requests to update some documentation.
But I mean, it's valuable at the end of
Yeah,
the day, right? Because it's so difficult to maintain documentation, and like every effort can help a lot to the team that is
yeah,
maintaining the library, etc.
yeah,
Cool.
definitely. Yeah, and then my
So.
first real contribution to Lion, it's what was helpful is that they had this label on their issues, like a
Mhm.
good first issue, I think it's called, which you sometimes see in like the bigger
Yeah.
open source projects, and that's really nice because if you're not used to creating pull requests or you're not familiar with the library yet, it's
Mhm.
a good way to do both to yeah, get familiar with the whole pull request process to get a review and then get some comments, fix those, etc. And also to get familiar with the library you're contributing to, with the structure it's set up in, etc. So I looked
Mhm.
for one of those and attempted to fix it. Got some comments on the first time, and then I had to fix those. So yeah,
Nice, nice. And I talked about BGS Conf at the beginning of our podcast, and you were one of the speakers at our first edition of BGS Conf. So I want you to tell me, how was your experience as a speaker, but also as an attendee? Like, how was the conference for you?
yeah. Thank you again for allowing me to speak at your conference. Um, I must say it was really like an awesome experience to do that for the first time. And of course, I'm not gonna lie, I was really nervous to get up on a stage in front of people, both in real life and then being videotaped to be broadcasted at home as well. Uh, so yeah, but overall, a really fun experience. I think yeah, it just really nice to be up on a stage and talk about a topic that interests you and to really share the knowledge on that. And furthermore, it was really nice to also get in contact with other speakers, to
Mhm.
hear also just be attendees, yeah, talk to you after the talk, to discuss some topics, or yeah, it was awesome. And then yeah, the talks themselves were really nice. Felt a bit the typical imposter syndrome when uh, when you're between those kind of people. Yeah, they were really amazing speakers there. Yeah, so I had to go up against them, or not against them, but I mean
Yeah, but actually, I remember that after the conference, I talked with some of the speakers, and they were like really amazed by your talk, knowing that it was your first time talking at the conference. They were like telling me, "You have to recruit that guy. He needs to become one of the speakers." And yeah, I mean, like you did a very good job.
that's
Uh,
nice to hear.
your
Thank
talk.
you.
And so, any plans to apply for other conferences?
um, Maybe later, I don't know. It was a fun experience, and I'm really glad that I did it. But it's also very nerve-wracking.
Demanding.
Yeah, I did. So I don't know. I'm also a bit of a procrastinator, so I know that like in the couple of weeks before the talk, I was really starting to get to the deadline of like, damn, I really have to get my presentation together right now.
Yeah. Uh, And so during that talk, you talked about accessibility, right? So can you explain why did you choose that subject and give us a bit more info about accessibility in general?
Yeah, so I chose the topic of accessibility because it's a topic that interests me. It's a topic that I've come into contact. I came into contact with on other conferences at first, and then more in depth in some tutorials that were given at ING. So at ING we have like a real accessibility champion program where you can do tutorials and yeah, mainly tutorials, and then we have like our meetups as well where we talk about these topics. And you have different levels that you can achieve, and you can do an exam in between. And so that's what I did. I did some trainings there, tutorials, and then I became a champion level 1. And that's where I get really interested into the topic. And I really wanted to have the experience of being a speaker once. And that's why I thought maybe I'm not always the most technical guy, or at least not in my line of work right now. And so there's probably a lot of people who know more about web components than I do. But maybe I can bring some added value on the accessibility topic. And I just thought I'll submit a talk, or I'll submit a call for papers. And yeah, if there's someone who can do it better, then they can probably be a speaker at your conference. And if I'm the only one there, then at least someone is speaking about accessibility. And that's what my one of my main drivers to apply for the talk anyway, because I thought, well, someone should talk about it, and if it's not me, then it's maybe someone who's better at it. So no problem. And if there's no one else, then it will be better. It better be me, because someone should talk about it. And then like, what is accessibility exactly? So yeah, accessibility is more than just web accessibility. What most people, or most developers, front-end developers, will think of when they hear the word accessibility. Accessibility is more than that. It's also things you see in the street. So like you have on the sidewalk, when there's a crosswalk, you have these knobs on the floor that you can feel with your feet, or with like a walking stick for people with vision impairment, to notify them that there's a crosswalk coming. Or you have elevators in otherwise not so easily accessible places, like a train station, or there's sometimes only stairs or escalators. You have elevators as well for wheelchairs. So those are forms of yeah, helping, or yeah, those are forms of accessibility as well. And when we think about web access or accessibility in general, is then the removal of barriers that slow down or even stop people with disabilities from using products or services. So that's why it doesn't only apply to web. But yeah, for the rest, there's an estimation that there's 15% of people in the world that have a disability. So it's really a large portion of the user base, right? So that's why it's also really important to focus on this, because 15% is a large amount of your user base. So yeah, there's also more to it than the disabilities that we usually think of, which are permanent disabilities. We think of blindness or color blindness, or things like that. But there's more than that. There's also, for example, you have being deaf as a permanent disability, while having an ear infection, that's a temporary disability that you can have. Like, you might not be able to hear hear that well for a week or so. And then there's also situational disabilities. That's where you're commuting, for example, in a busy train station, or you're in a loud bar where you can't really hear everything. And so that's a spectrum that's created, and it visualizes that by designing a solution for someone with a permanent disability, we're also offering solutions for a much greater audience than just people with a permanent disability.
Yeah, I remember during your talk, you said something at the end of your talk. It was like accessibility is necessary for some, but useful for all, or something like that. And it really clicked for me because it's true. Like sometimes I'm on a website and it's not really accessible, and like you click on the label of a field and it doesn't go to the field, or you click on something and it doesn't do what you are expecting it to do. It feels really weird. So it really clicked when you said that it's actually useful for all, so we should actually kind of take time to address the accessibility concerns in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think we're at the end of our session today. So to close the session, I wanted to let you say something to our community. Like, go for it.
Yeah, so actually maybe what you just mentioned is a really important one to also repeat, and that's that indeed accessibility is essential for some, but really useful for everyone. But what I also wanted to say is, don't be too scared of imposter syndrome. It's something that I know I suffer from. But in the end, it's really things like I've mentioned. There's really small things that you can do that help boost your confidence, or that help take away this imposter syndrome a little bit. Like what I mentioned about just looking for a good first issue, because maybe contributing to an open source library might be scary at first. But looking for good first issues or documentation updates when you see something is just misspelled, that will really already help you in becoming familiar with those things. And same goes for like a talk. If you have some topic that you think, I know this topic really well, but maybe I'm not a master at it, and you feel overwhelmed with, should I really even talk about it? Well, try to submit a call for papers anyway, if you really want to try and become a speaker. And if there's a better person to speak about that topic, then they will get selected. And if not, then someone should talk about it, and that could better be you then.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very nice closing. Thank you, Stan, for agreeing to do this. And I hope to see you in one of our next podcasts, maybe when you will become the world-known speaker.
Very nice, very nice. That's a nice objective for the future.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who listened to us today, and see you soon. Bye.